G'day everyone, Ben here from 30 Foot Drop, and I'm here with the lovely Peta from the I Can't Stand podcast. She is our advocate of the month this month, and what a month it has been with her taking over our social media. It has been amazing. Welcome, Peta, and thank you very much for joining me.
Oh, thank you, Ben. That was a lovely introduction. Hello, everyone.
So, Peta, the I Can't Stand podcast, how did this come about?
Yeah, so I'll give you the very quick version because I love a good chat. But the reason why the podcast came about was, well, to give you firstly, the podcast is called I Can't Stand, and I answer questions about what it's like to live with a disability from my audience who tends to be the non-disabled community, and it allows them to better understand what it's like to live with a disability. And on alternative weeks, I interview somebody else with a disability to hear their experience and their thoughts on what it's like to live with a disability, because I only have one lived experience. I have cerebral palsy, and I know what it's like to live with cerebral palsy for me, but I think it's really important for all of us to better understand. So the reason why I started the podcast, basically I was stuck in a job that I didn't feel valued in, and I felt really stuck and stagnant. So I did that scary thing and I jumped and I started my own business.
And look, that jump to actually start your own business, become an entrepreneur, how scary is that?
Yeah, I have to say I felt sick for a few weeks.
Absolutely. And then it starts to dawn on you that you are the master of your own destiny.
I think it's, there's both positives and negatives. I think for people like us with disabilities, the flexibility of hours, where we can conduct our work is really helpful. But also, if you have a really bad disability day and you don't have the energy to work, you have to then yourself realize that no income is coming in for that day whatsoever. So there's always something you have to think about when you run your own business.
And that was going to be my next question, was how do you balance the financial independence and the, like I said, knowing that if things aren't working out, then what happens then?
Well, yeah, exactly. And I think regardless of whether you have a disability or not, lots of small businesses can relate to that conundrum of saying, well, what do I do if this doesn't work out? Luckily, I have a couple of degrees sitting behind me in the past that hopefully I could draw on if things really started to get difficult, but I'm hoping I'll never have to do that because I truly love what I do and I'm very proud of the podcast to date.
And so you should be. As an advocate as well, I listen to it because I find it really fascinating to get this other lens upon the disability experience and to help me reflect as well upon what some of the issues are that are happening around the place.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not until people send me a question that I often have to think about. A lot of the time, maybe like you, Ben, you just get on with life and you don't really think about how you do things, why you do things, and why you think a certain way. So it's been great for me to reflect and think, oh, okay, there is a reasoning behind the way I do things and the way I think.
And also, in some cases as well, it makes you revisit experiences from the past where you may have reflected on those things. There was one recently where you were actually talking about disability and conflict, obviously reflecting upon what's happening in the Ukraine at the moment, which, we'll leave that to one side because we're not a politics, neither of us really specialise in that.
Yeah.
But for me as a veteran, it made me sort of reflect on that and sort of reconcile where and who I am now compared to where I was before. And that's powerful. Really, really powerful.
That makes me feel really happy to think that my work did that for you. Thank you, Ben. As I said, it really wasn't until the war broke out in the Ukraine that I sort of had to reflect and think, what would I do if I was a Ukrainian and I had to flee? And, where I'm fortunate enough, where I've never had to think about that before as an Australian. And I just thought, nobody is talking about this. And it's an area that I think we should all sort of consider, even though the subject matter can be really difficult to confront. Really, people with disabilities are not thought of during times of crisis.
Yeah, and we've seen that in our own backyard as well. I mean, you look what's happening up through Queensland at the moment with the flooding. There's been some, I've seen some anecdotal examples of that at the moment. Bushfires, any disasters, we tend to get forgotten, apart from those who are close to us, which in turn puts them in danger often as well, which is something I struggle to come to terms with.
Yeah, of course. I think when you have to rely on other people by default, you then are thinking, well, I might be putting not only myself in danger, but the people I love in danger, or the people I employ in danger. And that's really a question that none of us should have to face, and it should be managed in a way that everybody feels safe regardless of what's going on. I'm actually releasing an episode next week about the floods and what it's like to live through the floods as somebody with a disability. I'm really excited to release that one.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a good one. I'll definitely, well, mind you, your podcast will automatically go onto my playlist anyway, as they come out. Look, you mentioned before about your degrees, and one of the reasons I was very excited that you actually agreed to do this is your degrees. Do you want to explain to those who are watching or listening what your degrees are in?
Sure. So I have a Bachelor of Business and Commerce. I did that straight out of high school. And then I graduated that degree and I thought, my goodness, there's like thousands of people with this degree. How am I ever going to stand out? Particularly knowing how difficult it is to gain employment as a disabled person. So I thought, okay, what do I really love? What direction do I want to lean on in regards to business? And at that time, it was accessible tourism. I'm a really big advocate for accessible tourism and the importance of being a tourist to people's well-being and the sort of economic stimulation that tourism can bring as well. So I did a master's degree in tourism after my bachelor's degree.
And that is exactly why I'm so excited to have you on. Anybody who has watched or followed 30-foot drop for any amount of time knows that we are pushing hard to get accessible tourism more widely recognised here in the southwest of WA. I mean, the idea of being able to have an accessible tourism hub here is just so exciting from an economics point of view, from a business point of view, from an inclusion point of view.
I think we're often the same person in this way, Ben. Like, we both love tourism, it's very clear. But I think even from a very practical point of view, as a Melburnian sitting here today, if I ever had the opportunity to go overseas again, to long distance overseas, I would be highly encouraged to go via Perth, because it's easier to get to London via Perth because it's a direct flight. For those who don't know, it's super difficult to have layovers and transfers just with equipment, having access to go to the bathroom, all those things. So Perth could really be an accessible hub, WA in general, but that's really an opportunity for your state over there.
And a huge one, especially, so where I live near Busselton in WA, we actually have an airport here, and pre-COVID, it was planned for there to be a direct flight from Melbourne to Busselton. It's been delayed quite a few times now, but hopefully that's going to start up soon. And when it does, I can finally get onto the council about making it more accessible, because at the moment the options they have there, even my highly mobile paraplegic friend was refused service via there, which was not a pleasant discussion.
Yeah, I mean, you and I could probably do a 2-hour podcast on our travel stories. I went to the World Tourism Conference as part of my degree in 2014 in Berlin, and I went to a conference and they had a whole day dedicated to accessible tourism. So I was so excited. I went to every conference there was, and the CEO, I'm pretty sure, of Lufthansa at the time stood up and said, "We are the most accessible, airline there is, because we have a wheelchair on the plane." And I'm sitting here going, that's law. You have to have a wheelchair on the plane. That is law. What about, how do I get in said wheelchair and use the bathroom? It's such an overlooked human right as people with disabilities. We're just expected to use catheters or nappies, suck it up and deal with it. Where in actuality, I'd really just like to use the bathroom like everyone else.
Oh, yeah. It would be very, very, very nice just to be able to be treated like a human on an airplane. I mean, I'm also 6'4", so economy class 6'4" is hard without a disability, let alone the pressure areas that occur on my knees every time I fly because they're pressed right up hard against the seat in front of me.
Yeah, I often think, why was I given such a passion for an area that is so, that is so inaccessible and choose to ignore us wholly as, a cohort? And I'm choosing to see it as my message to try and fix this area that I hope to do in the future. But yeah, it's certainly got a long way to go, and air travel isn't pleasant for many people with disabilities.
Absolutely. So we have a fun little game to play as part of the AMA. We have a list of 100 questions, and these are a range of questions, which some are quite, well, actually most of them are pretty interesting way of getting to know people. And so I'm going to use a randomizer and roll some dice so we can ask each other some questions.
I love that. Let's go.
So first question, who wants to go first? Do you want to ask me or should I ask you?
What about you? I'll ask you, seeing as it's been about me a lot. Let's balance this out.
Certainly. Question number 88.
Okay, 88 on this amazing list of questions. If you could pick any animal to talk, which would it be?
It would actually be... it would probably be my dog, if I'm going to be completely honest. Although I do have another couple of animals around the house as well that I'd be quite interested in. So, although currently not filled, I'm a massive fan of reptiles, and we're actually getting a new pet snake soon. Our old one passed away about 18 months ago. But I'd be really fascinated to know what's going through their head because they're such chill, beautiful creatures.
No,
What about you, Peter?
I completely agree. While I'm not a huge fan of snakes, I appreciate your love of them, and that's great. For me, I think it would be awesome to be able to just walk up to any bird and go, so where are you from? And where have you been? And what have you seen? Like, they're the ultimate travelers, are they not?
That is so true, Michael. Imagine the experiences they could pull together.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly those long distance birds that go across the Arctic. Amazing.
Yeah, and you can only imagine the amount of self-reflections a bird like that travels that far would actually do. Might actually be one you could actually ask, what is the meaning of life?
Maybe.
Oh God, that's why I love these questions. All right, what do we got now? Ooh, 58. So this one's for you first up. What is the best sound in the world?
Oh, the best sound in the world. This is very generic, but probably the sound of my coffee machine in the morning.
Oh yeah, yeah. I get that. I'm definitely one of those people that's just like, don't talk to me or make me make a decision until after that first cup of coffee.
Exactly.
Oh God, no. For me, it would be. It's like it's a combination of sounds because it's like the whole experience. It's the crashing of waves down the beach on a summer's day and the sound of a beer being cracked. Like that sort of combination of sounds. To me, it's just like, yeah, the week's over. This is great.
I love that. You're so on brand for being somebody from WA. That is such a WA answer. I love it.
Oh, look, we have some of the best coastline here. I'm so fortunate. From where I'm sitting right now, you go 150 metres that way and you're on the beach. It's
lovely.
I am so privileged and fortunate to live where I live. You know, yes, we live rurally, and that has its own challenges, especially if you have a disability. But it's just so worth it.
Completely.
All right, next up we have number 3.
Oh, okay. Number 3, could you live without the internet?
No. Straight up, no. I can go periods without it, and I quite enjoy going periods without it. So, for example, later this year, we're heading up to Goralia Station, which is on the inner coast of the Gulf of Exmouth. We'll be going up there and be there for, I think it's either 7 or 10 days, which is going to be absolutely amazing. Get away from all of it. But the world, you cannot be an effective advocate in the modern day without the use of the internet. It is both the best and worst of society all rolled up. What about yourself, Peter?
I agree. I couldn't live without the internet, both from the social connection point of view, but also just the ease of access. The fact I can go on to Woolies or Coles and get my groceries delivered is such a lifesaver. And for many people, it seems like a very basic thing, in life, but it could save me up to 2.5, 3 hours in my day, just being able to jump online, order what I want, and it's at my door. Amazing.
Yeah, and that is so true. I hadn't even contemplated looking at it from that point of view. But yeah, we do the same. We order everything. As long as you can avoid the worst parts of society when doing it, it's all good. Peter, lately you have had some issues with your car. For those who follow your social media, and as part of the question, I want you to tell people where they can find you as well on social media and where they can find the podcast. But cars, the freedom to travel, the freedom to be able to get somewhere independently is something that is so overlooked by able-bodied society. Why is it so important, and why is it so frustrating when it goes wrong?
Well, I mean, for me, my car's pretty integral to my life. I won't say it's integral to my personality, but it feels very intrinsic to my life and my ability to feel competent and independent and like the person I want to be. In saying that, it's a very privileged position to be in, right? Lots of people, first of all, can't afford to have a car. You only have to look at the price of petrol. When you have a disability, you may not be able to drive a car yourself. I'm able to drive. Therefore, you're reliant on other people to drive you. And these specialized cars that are converted for people with disabilities are very expensive. Yes, they can be covered by the NDIS, but like, for example, my car took 511 days to get approval for the NDIS, even though I'd been driving up until that point for like 7 years and I was due for it. Like I'd already bought the car. It was just sitting there waiting to be converted. So, I appreciate how difficult it can be, but my God, once you've got it, it changes my life. What about you, Ben?
Look, I'm exactly the same. So I'm, once again, very privileged to be in the situation that I'm in, where I live rurally, have a vehicle. And on top of that, I have a 4-wheel drive van, so I can get off road, which is intrinsic to my resilience and my way of unwinding. Getting out and going exploring is brilliant, especially when you've got a young child as well, who just loves getting out and getting dirty. When it goes wrong, it's really hard. And every time I apply for a new car, it's a 2.5, 3-year process through Veterans Affairs. So we're through 2 different funding systems that, in theory, should be a lot easier than they are.
Yeah.
It's so much frustration and sometimes can feel like a full-time job.
It really can. I mean, I follow lots of people on my Instagram with lots of different disabilities, and yeah, living with a disability is a full-time job. By the time you manage all your appointments, if you're managing an NDIS plan like I am, like you're forever paying invoices and making sure that all your equipment is serviced, and if something breaks down, literally the next month of your life could be really, really difficult. And regardless of that difficulty, you've still got to, live life, function, and also for both of us, we have to run a business. So yes, having a disability 100% is a full-time job. And that doesn't even include when you consider how long it takes for us to just get up in the morning and get ready.
Yes. I love it when people ask for an 8 a.m. meeting. I'm like, no. Earliest I can do at a real pinch is 9:30. But sometimes that's pushing it, and that's with me getting up at 6 in the morning.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. The joys. Look, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, Peter. It has been really great to be able to connect with you over the last month and have this opportunity to collaborate on this. And I really look forward to the future and actually doing this again. I've already got a few ideas sort of flowing through my head about what's coming up in the future. Why don't you finish off by telling people where they can find you? And then I've got one final question for you.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you, Ben, for letting me work with you over the month of March and allowing me to be the disability advocate for 30 Foot Drop. I truly, truly appreciate it. You are such a lovely man and your team are fantastic. So if anybody with a disability is hoping to become an advocate for you in the future, I highly, highly recommend it. If people watching want to continue and follow me in what it's like to live with cerebral palsy, you can find me on Instagram. My handle is my name, which is Peta Hooke. Or you can follow me on the podcast, which is the I Can't Stand podcast. And I'm on every podcasting platform you can think of, including Apple, Spotify, and Google.